Look at these awesome organic potatoes, but there's a lot that still needs to happen. Do we need to spray again? Do we need to hill them? What about weeds? What about bugs? What about all this stuff? We're going to talk more about that and show you how you can grow an awesome crop of potatoes too. So one of the things that we need to do right now is hill our potatoes, but there's several other things going on, and I want to give you a little bit of a recap and remind you that if you haven't seen the previous couple videos of planting these things, talking about fertilizers and sprays, because we want to do a natural and organic garden. However, there's still pest problems and there's still issues. Those videos will cover those things, but we'll talk about those a little bit because some of them are still relevant as we reapply things like sprays. So let's talk about mulching first though, and also potato behavior. So we're starting to see a little bit of some buds on these potatoes, and that's an indicator that it's a good time to hill the potatoes. You can do it before, but typically that's when we are hilling our potatoes, and a lot of old farmers will tell you the same. So we're wanting to pull this soil, and you can see where I've already done just a little bit right here. The whole bed still needs to be done. I'm so happy again with how these potatoes look. We were having a little bit of flea beetle damage earlier, and now we've eliminated most of that. There still is a little bit, and there's a few pinholes, but that's okay. That's perfectly fine, but the product Splivin has really helped. We've applied it twice so far, and it's just a bacteria that disrupts the digestive system of these bugs that we don't want. And so that has been really useful. It's helped us with other things as well that could cause a little bit of problems, but now we're at the stage where we need to hill these potatoes. They're going to start setting them right now, and they'll be really tiny. And the more loose our soil is and the cooler it is, really the better. Potatoes are more of a cool loving plant, and especially the soil, we don't want it to get too hot. And so how are we going to accommodate that? There's several ways, and some of them are more expensive or cheap. The best way to do it is if you have loose enough soil, and this isn't the best soil that we have here. It's quite rocky, as you can see, but we've been taking the soil and just pulling it up and hilling the plant. They need this because the looser it is, the easier it is for the tubers to get bigger, and your potatoes don't need to be seeing any sunlight. This is really critical. Whenever you see a potato that's green on it, don't eat that one. There's actually some toxins that can get built up when the potatoes are growing and that spud is sticking out of the ground and the sun is hitting it. There's some chemicals that are created, and it is not healthy for human consumption. And so you definitely don't want to do that. But it's also important that the soil be as cool as possible. Potatoes need some moist soil. They don't need to be waterlogged, but they need to be cool. And so the first thing we're doing right now is we're just going down the line, and you can see where I've just been pulling up dirt here, and you can hill them tremendously. They love it. I've seen farmers that'll pull dirt because they have so much loose soil and they have tractors to do it. They'll pull soil 6 inches up, and that would be ideal. But for one, I'm hoeing mine by hand, and I just don't have that kind of soil. And you've seen maybe some videos where they'll just have one row of potatoes to this entire bed. Personally, I think I don't want to use that much land for potatoes. I don't think it's necessary either. I think there's a little bit of a balance. But when you're using tractors and stuff, that's typically what you'll see is one row of potatoes in here, and they'll just take all of this dirt and really make a massive hill. And if you're trying to get the biggest yields, that is helpful, but you can also use a mulch. You can either get some hardwood mulch, you can use a straw. The problem with that is a lot of times it's been sprayed, so you got to watch out for that, especially if you're doing natural gardening, unless you know somebody who's not doing it that way. But you can also use hay. We have grass on this farm that is going to be harvested, and there's always a bunch of loose stuff, and we can use that. Now, yes, you are going to get some seeds from a lot of these things as you're bringing this in, especially if it's hay or grass, straw, all that kind of stuff. You can bring seeds into your garden, but this seed bank right here, there's enough seeds in this dirt that we could cover it up for 50 years, pull the fabric off of it, and there still be weeds that pop up. So we're going to have weeds in here. It can just make more But mulch is so good for keeping the soil cool. It's especially good for potatoes and root crops that need expansion space because they can expand in loose hay and mulches, and as long as they don't get any sunshine, that's just fine. Potatoes can grow in that very good, and so use what's available to you. There's other options as well, but mulch is really important for not only maintaining cool soil and expansion room for the spuds, but also providing a home for microorganisms, because the soil moisture is more steady. Anything that's bare is going to dry out a lot quicker. The sun is harsh on the top few inches of soil, especially in a dry period. And so if we're wanting to get high levels of natural fungi and microbial activity, we want earthworms and all this stuff, we need to have that cover right there, and that can be really helpful. So there's a balance. This is an important part of raising potatoes. I really want to get a big crop. So we're going to be adding not only some mulch, but we're going to be hilling them on top of it, and that should give us a pretty good yield, I think. Potatoes have a lot of different pests, but with anything, like I've said in the past, you got to start early. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And these plants are healthy because we have really nurtured them. They've constantly had water. They've constantly had food of some sort. The soil is pretty decent here, and potatoes are fairly forgiving, but if they're getting eaten alive by bugs or deer or whatever, that's a problem. And so it's important as gardeners that we understand the issues and try to circumvent those as quickly as possible. No matter what the crop is, animal or whatever, everything has a stressor or two. And sometimes if it's like potatoes, there can be several. But that doesn't mean that you can't have potatoes that are going to thrive and be very successful for you. There's just a few tips and tricks. So I really like using organic sprays. We've used neem oil on these, and we've also used Splivin. Both of these products are natural and have done a fantastic job, but you don't want to get behind the 8 ball. Once your plants are really being fed on, the bugs communicate with each other. They're working off of pheromones. As a beekeeper, I can tell you that pheromones are very powerful, and so we want those working in our favor, which means they're not telling the other ones, hey, there's something good over here. And we want to reproduce and lay our eggs on this plant. We want to stop that early. And we also don't want our plants to get really stressed. So ensuring that there's plenty of adequate water and nutrition, and they're not getting fed on early. When our plants are healthier, they are going to perform better, obviously, in every way, shape, and form. So those sprays, starting early, focusing and trying to get underneath the leaf, you can use a very cheap sprayer to accomplish this, but we've already done that twice on the Splivin and once on the neem oil, and you can see the result. Very healthy looking plants. Not perfect, there's a couple holes here and there from the flea beetles, and maybe 1 or 2 other chomps or chews on a leaf, but nothing that's going to affect our harvest at all. And nature's going to have its way to a degree. The last thing I'd like to mention is fertilizer. We've already fertilized these plants once, and it was just about a tablespoon per plant as a side dressing, but they were much smaller. I think we can all say that these things have benefited from that organic fertilizer, but they need more. The plants are just now beginning to focus on those tubers. That's a lot of energy. These plants can produce 4 pounds, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the nutrition and everything else. And so it's really important, I think, that we invest into that. I've said this in the other videos. I think it's totally worth it. A good organic fertilizer, quality fertilizer is, yes, going to cost you money, but you're already putting in all this work. You're hilling the potatoes, you've purchased the potatoes, you're spraying them or doing everything that you're doing to make these things thrive. You might as well get the most yield per plant. And there's several good organic options that we like, and I've got to apply more. So this time I want to do 2 tablespoons, or you can do a side dressing. Obviously there's a lot of different fertilizers out there. I know guys that are using just go to the co-op and get a 10, 10, 10. I don't like using that high of nitrogen on my potatoes, but there's several of them that are very successful with that kind of stuff. So talk to someone who's successful in your area if you can. That's always a really good idea. But potatoes require less nitrogen, more interested in the P and the K part of the NPK, so the phosphorus and potassium. And so I'm really using something a lot lower than that, but I just haven't found it necessary. To me, there's a lot of good things already in the soil. We just need to have the plants in a healthy position to be able to go after it, and we also need the soil in a healthy position to be able to convert the things that aren't available to our plants into a form that are available to our plants. And that's where, as we hill these things, we're going to be putting mulch on them as well, which is going to help. And I'm going to be getting a lot more earthworms, a lot more activity underneath there, and it's going to be just thriving. And as those things are doing their job underneath the soil, they're going to be taking things that are already in there that your plant can't access and make them accessible. So that is really important as well. So make sure that you get your potatoes hilled if you can. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Some people are planting them in buckets. Some people are putting them in tubs and planting them directly into hay and straw and all kinds of other things. Potatoes are an interesting crop and unique, but this is a more traditional way, I think, of doing potatoes. It works really good, and I'm just sharing the way I do it. So let me know how you like to grow potatoes, or maybe how somebody in your family used to do it. And get ready to enjoy some spuds. We'll see you in the next video.